When educators use the word accessibility, they often mean physical limitations for their students, such as mobility, seeing, and hearing. But there are other potential barriers to learning, including socioeconomic, cultural, and ideological access. Educators are increasingly aware of the ways in which their teaching can open up opportunities, access, and inclusion for some students, and at the same time, do the opposite for others. For example, creating an offline, interactive mobile application prototype might be effective for a student who lacks internet access at home, but it can also be difficult to learn to use that application without access to on-demand online tutorials. Designing a scientific research poster might help a student better structure a lab report than a traditional paper format, but doing so might also discourage a student without access to large format printers to actually deliver their work. With intentional approaches to accessibility and inclusivity, higher education institutions can amplify the opportunities for all of their students to alleviate the challenges that students face in accessing digital tools and in communicating and learning online. Inclusivity and accessibility start with ensuring all students from all backgrounds and socioeconomic realities have access to digital tools, and, more importantly, can learn how to use these tools effectively, responsibly, and quickly, so as to adapt to new digital tools and technologies throughout their lives. There are multiple approaches that have proven to be successful in ensuring all students are included in the process of becoming digitally fluent and have access to digital technologies. Let's hear from individuals who have made Creative Cloud accessible to all students.
Two essential fundamental rules for digital teaching and learning are that we must use these powerful technologies first to connect people more than we divide them, and second, to promote critical thinking and creative problem solving. We must reflect critically on the choices we make with digital technologies and constantly ask ourselves who is being included and potentially who might be excluded by the choices that we make. We should aim to create teachable moments in our classes to raise awareness about digital divides so that we can work together to creatively problem solve at every turn with such rapidly advancing and important technologies.
One of my teams of students, they were looking at the resources for students with disabilities on Clemson's campus. And what they ended up doing was they did interviews with people who were involved in those endeavors, and they also interviewed students who are benefiting from those endeavors as well. And what they wanted to do is just shed light on the resources and then use Clemson as a model for other campuses who may or may not have those same resources, just to better address those issues. And so what they ended up doing was creating a Spark page that was so beautifully done. What they did is they took their own original pictures. I told them they needed to use their own assets. They edited all of those photos in Lightroom. They compiled this Adobe Spark page. They had also a video trailer that they made that pitched their entire project in a more accessible way. And they gave a beautiful, beautiful presentation that paid tribute to students with disabilities and the amazing work that they're able to do on campus, and then also trying to inspire other campuses to do the same.
When it comes to matters of access and inclusivity, specifically as it relates to digital technologies and digital literacy, there's not really a one-size-fits-all solution. I mean, there's just a fundamental divide between those who have access physically and conceptually to some of these tools and technologies, the hardware and software, and those who don't. But one of the ways we can begin to approach this conversation is to think about the lowest common denominator among students, and that is, for me, the smartphone. And so when I design activities and assignments, I not only think about like the prime example, what would be the best kind of version of this, but I also think about, would it also work to produce something on let's say Adobe Premiere Rush or Adobe Spark Video to accomplish the same task. And so when I'm designing activities for students, I want to think about not only the best kind of example, but also what could work in a mobile production situation and what can we reasonably expect from that activity. And that's not going to solve all these problems, but it's at least a step in the right direction of making digital creativity a far more accessible approach to thinking about digital literacy in the 21st century.
I think one way we can help improve access and inclusion as related to digital literacies is to acknowledge we're talking about a bunch of different things. For example, having physical or material access to hardware and software doesn't necessarily mean you know how to use it. So in this case, access also means how to use it and where to find help when you're using it. Similarly, getting folks to remember that Wi-Fi, internet connectivity, is not universal and does cost people money. Just getting access aside, there's also the need to think in terms of making all texts all media, accessible to people with different abilities for processing text. It's not just captions, headers, and alt text tags. We're talking about providing a variety of access points to text so that individuals, no matter what hardware, software, or sensory input they use to access the text, have an equitable experience. Once you do this, you're likely to find that multiple access points also leads to better learning.
At Berkeley, we've started a pilot project called the Adobe Fellows at Berkeley program, and that is bringing together cohorts of faculty to work together to create a learning community. We help them design assignments that integrate Adobe tools into their curriculum, and we work with their students and support them in completing those assignments in their courses. So it's a holistic model that supports both sides of the equation, because we realize that it's very difficult to help students develop their digital literacy skills if instructors don't have those. And at places like Berkeley, instructors want to focus on their research, they want to focus on their area of expertise. They don't want to be adding technology to their plate. And so we come in and partner with them.
As we continue our discussion about the digital divide and how it exists in education, it is important for us to continue talking about digital access and technology inclusion for our students at all levels. Whether it is the K-12 level or higher ed, it is important for us to know that the digital divide does exist. And for some students, being able to access technology tools is not as simple as we think. Many times, if the universities or the colleges or schools do not provide that access, students lose that opportunity. We know that the digital divide exists on 3 different levels. The first being geographic, something as simple as living in a rural area or deep within an inner city area where high-speed internet access may not be available could be a challenge for some students. Another level is that there is a socioeconomic factor to the digital divide. There are many households where if the household income is $50,000 or less, some students may not have high-speed internet, which of course, that stops access altogether. And then if they do, they may not have the technology that they need to do some of the things that other students have access to do. And then, of course, finally, the racial area. There are some studies that show that white students do have better access to technology as well as digital access and technology inclusion, whereas ethnic minority students such as Black students, Hispanic or Native American may not have that same access. So we have to continue to look at it from a perspective that we have to level that ground for our students. At institutions such as mine, which is a HBCU, a historically Black college and university, we are taking steps to address the digital divide. We do survey our students to see what technology access they have and how we can help. We also have one of our learning outcomes as information literacy, which we know digital literacy is a big part of information literacy. So we are measuring assessing information literacy through digital literacy with our students so that they can be competitive once they graduate. Also, we include digital access in all of our classes. All of our students have access to Adobe Creative Cloud Suite because we are an Adobe campus. Our faculty have access to the Adobe Creative Cloud Suite as well as our staff. So we feel very confident that we are creating a digital space for our students to be competitive, to be knowledgeable, and then once they graduate, they are able to contribute to this digital world that we all see right now.